So as I think about it, the board's role, let's say, is to partner with the community of owners. Let's just start there. And partnership also implies there's a level of necessity in the relationship, and it's about creating something together, and it's about our interdependency, and so that in turn, in contrast to what it has been in the past, it's we've looked to our community of voting members or our members as source, as being the pool of where we get our support, and so we don't think in terms of partnership. We think in terms of people being spiritually fed, or people being okay about things, and so let me just shift to just speaking into ownership. So ownership has a couple different dimensions. If we think about what we commonly think of ownership as possessing something, this is mine, this is what I have, and there is a kind of a link that we can say, if you have something, you need to take care of it if it's of value to you. But that's not it yet. So ownership has to transcend what we have. It has to align with what enables us to be who we are, and we have to own something that's dimensional about ourselves in the context of our trying to evolve this value system. It begins with owning our journey, owning our transformational journey, our process, which means owning our shadow, owning what we've created in the context of our baggage, our stuff. But that gives rise to empowerment when we are beginning to kind of see that when we own what we have created, we can also own something that has yet to be created, that can be kind of the antidote to all the things that have lived out of our unintentional creative process. So we have to gradually bring ownership, the value of ownership, online, and replace, or at least make ownership and governing membership equal. Right now they're not. People can become members, voting members, and not embody that value of really, we're co-creating, we're in partnership with the leaders. See, that's the other thing. So there's a maturity of the board, and there's a maturity of the community of governing members. So there has to be a kind of convergence of these two values that gradually begin to mature into a relationship that lives in the context of, we're in this together, and we're going to do what we can to fulfill this purpose, because that's what we're empowered to do. So if our principles are true, that we can manifest a greater good, and if our working consciousness can be one in which we create a high degree of coherence in our relationship, like if owner partners have a high degree of coherence, in other words, everyone sees and feels into the same desired future together, and everyone, regardless of means, is willing to do what they can do to bring that forth, owner and partnership begins to blossom in that context, and it transcends the issues of, if I'm happy or if I feel good about things. No, this is all motivated by the intent to create something together that fulfills the purpose. So the way ownership,
right,
the way it becomes important for the organization is when it translates into the funding part of it. Okay, and so what I've talked about is in general terms. So when it comes down to the actual funding part, after people have sensed ownership means really understanding my capacity to create a greater good, and then we link that understanding to the organization, to their capacity to support the intent to fulfill the ministry's purpose. And so it's an easier shift of being able to brand the funding of the church in the context of ownership after people are aligned with the value. So I just want to make that point of clarification. We aren't going to leave it hang out in fairyland. We're going to pull it down into, okay, this is how we move the needle with respect to what we're trying to create together. We do a series on transformation, and we basically drive home in order for you to get out of victimhood, you have to own what got created. So ownership means, first of all, embracing your baggage. And then the second dimension of ownership is really about owning who you are and your capacity to make a difference. And then the next dimension of what our strategy is to link that sense of empowerment to the community, to the organization through the membership system. So there's the narrative, and then there's the systems that bring people through the conversations that unfold at various aspects of the journey. It's hard to describe, David, but it's more of a sense of getting a feeling of what we're trying to create, and then looking at the steps that implement the various conversations.
And I'm there. I mean, that's exactly, for me, the whole purpose of all of this is for me to get a sense of the large picture, and then how to take concrete steps to move the community along, or
right
into that. So yeah.
Right. So if you were, just for a moment, if you were to kind of, in your own mind, think, okay, there's the funding model kind of explanation, and then there's the membership system kind of explanation. And I touch on the idea of ownership and partnership in those videos, but this is the conversation that those videos don't contain, and that is, in order to establish those systems that I described in those videos, there first has to be, the field has to be prepared. The field is the energy of the community and the coherence of the message, the messaging, the narrative that describes what we're entering into, what we're welcoming as what we're going to practice. We're going to learn about ownership, because it's integral to our partnering. And then I have to work with the board. So they are in the same struggle of trying to hear it from me. And because this is how it happens. But
so when you said that that you had messaging and other things to put into place in order to lay the groundwork for all of this, what kind of things were you thinking about in your mind when you said messaging?
Well, so part of it is, when we talk about giving, when we bless the love offering, we also talk about ownership. Part of our intent is to accelerate the cultivation of ownership and partnership, because it takes time, as you know. And so the first step is just talking, using those words and giving them context for why we're using these words. And so that happens through my center updates. I talk about our evolutionary process and why our practice of ministry needs to evolve out of minister-centric, and in order to do that, we have to create owner and partners, and what that means is that we have to show up differently in our way of in our relationship to the church. We have to own our effort to really fulfill our purpose, and that includes managing all of our expenses and doing all the things that we do. So these are the conversations that people have to kind of see and help them understand the effort. And so that's the first dimension of partnership, is having people understand each other's effort. So part of the board's job is to understand that most of the folks don't know what goes on And so if absent of them being able to have a window into the board's effort, it's just a kind of mysterious thing. So we try to break down that kind of mythical, magical aspect of our operations. And so we have regular conversations. Now the board does its update, and it's all about giving information to help the community understand the effort. So imagine us doing this for a year and how the partnership is going to begin to evolve, and how the community will begin to value and welcome that information, because it's not a gimmick. It's not about trying to get them to give more. It's really about them having the information they need to own it, to be able to ask questions that invite them into greater engagement. So that's what I mean by tilling the field, planting the seeds, and getting that out there. And that's what's the hardest part, and that's the most overlooked part of cultural change. We go to putting on new programs and systems without creating the foundation within which people understand. And then if they understand why these things are happening, they become more enrolled into wanting to help move the needle, because they see opportunities when they understand what's behind it.
How do you integrate those on your Sunday morning, those weekly conversations?
Okay, so in our service, we have an order of service like most churches, and it's strategic. So we do things a certain way because we want to have a certain effect. And so the 4 updates, as I mentioned, community center update, board update, and transformational stories update, that happens every month. And so the routine now is that we've just launched the routine of it this last fall. And so now we're cycling in, and so Jane owns the transformational stories update slot, which means that she collects people's stories and she coaches them into a 5-minute presentation. They write their own script, she reviews it, she sits down with them, has them practice it, time it, and it's phenomenal. And then we have the board, as I mentioned. They own now. Their job is to they know that the board updates purpose is partnership. And so don't give them information, give them insight into the experience, the effort. And it's hard for them. I keep on trying to, can I speak? I have to raise my hand because they want to try themselves.
I imagine that's a tough road, not to have them give information, but rather give the effort.
Yeah, it is. It's like they're trying to figure out this next update, and they just started talking about, oh, we can go over this and we can tell them about that. And I said, why don't you talk about what happens when you try to pull together a budget? How does the budget happen? So in another way of looking at the ownership partnership thing is that as you begin to talk in those terms and decouple from some of our traditional things, like we talk about tithing and things like that, and other things that when we bless the love offering, we often kind of link people's appreciation and value with their generosity, and so those kinds of traditional ways, I have been trapped in them myself, and I've had to kind of work hard to begin to shift. And part of the neat thing is that our treasurer, who now blesses the love offering every Sunday, who is quite stuck in the old way. I mean, he's been a part of that church for 25, 30 years and seen the comings and goings of a lot of ministers. Anyway, he's now able to bless the love offering in a way that really invites people into the maturity of the effort. We're asking you to help us, with our effort. And that's sort of the spirit. And when people understand what the effort is, they say, oh, of course, we want to help. So we can't say that until they understand what the effort is. So that's what our baby steps are now with evolving this value. Is as the board is able to open itself, including open board meetings. I mean, we don't want anybody to feel like the board's in a separate place. We want people to feel like the board's in the center of the community, kind of visible, wants everybody to see what we do and what our effort is. That helps people kind of not only feel good about what's going on in terms of leadership, but for those who have confidence in the people, they don't even bother. It's like no one shows up to those open board meetings because everybody knows the people and knows what the effort is.